Hey, Blaine, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you as ever. And we recorded a video recently about the war in Iran and the Ukraine war, which are hot wars. But I think one of the things that people don't understand or don't always get is there is a war that is going on in the money markets, in the financial sector. So how is that being waged, and who's winning, and why they're doing it that way?
So let's go to the first battle in that space that was pitched on the financialists. And it happened very early into the Trump administration. When you saw us park the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, impressive ship that it is, right off the coast of Venezuela, and we said, we're going after the cartels and we're going to have a war on the cartels. That's where the first battle, those are the first shots in that war. Why? Because the drug cartels, those little peaches, they don't only do the human trafficking, the child trafficking, the fentanyl and all of that stuff. They're also into money laundering, big time. In fact, they're the vascular system to all of the shady financialists in the world. And so when you park the Ford off of Venezuela, who was the first shockingly surprising entity to cry foul and to say, oh, no, you don't. No, you're not going to do that, America. You get that ship away from Venezuela because we're not going to share any more intelligence with you in the Caribbean, says MI6.
I do remember that. And actually, I remember a conversation with you and EM, and you were saying all this stuff and what the USS Ford was doing in the Caribbean, gathering information, and It's just mind-boggling. And I was like, how do you know? How do you know? And then it turns out.
Scares the living crap out of the bankers. So if you think the cool kids at HSBC and the insurers like Lloyd's weren't eyebrows raised, what the hell's the United States doing? Oh, they were. And in Dubai at the DIFC and all those really great places, Hong Kong, all the great world capitals, all the places you really want to be. Very, very concerned. So what do we do next? The financial battle rolls on. We go to the Middle East. We're popping Iran in the face. Yes, we're doing a service to our grandkids by getting rid of nuclear threats, but there's more. We have essentially cut off one half of what the financialists were always playing us against, meaning they always buy both sides of every war. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. Why would this be any different? So we spent the last 47 years with all these wars in the Middle East, lots of death, lots of ruined lives, only to support the financialists. And whether they are betting on recapitalizing the IRGC and all of their nefarious laundering efforts and terror efforts and drug and human trafficking, sound familiar? It's the same model as the cartels, alongside of the other half of that equation, which by and large comes out of Tel Aviv, which by and large is connected to, the city of London. So then you have Lloyd's in the middle of it all, only too happy to insure your ship, but it's gotten very dangerous with these wars. That wrapper's going to cost you a lot. Oh, that's going to make the cost of oil go up. I sure hope that there's no insider trading with all those financialists betting on going long oil. Wait a minute. We could stop. We could actually make the prices go up even higher if we stop taking oil out of the North Sea, which is what they're doing. So what has Scott Bessent done? Well, 7 banks were implicated in money laundering for the IRGC, including a big one in Switzerland, Dubai, Hong Kong. They got either fined, sanctioned, or absolutely canceled by the United States. And so we're mopping up the money. And then just recently, a couple of months ago, you had the Iraqi leadership show their solidarity with us by rounding up Iranian spies and rounding up money laundering networks that were getting money to the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah in the billions of dollars. They found entire swimming pools that had covers over them, only there was no water there. It was all cash.
Wow.
And so we're mopping up the money. You can tell by the decimation of the Iranian economy that it's working. But wait a minute, there's more. This war doesn't end here. It's only getting turned up. So now that you got your enemy on the back foot, and you've got guys that are expressing their displeasure, former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, and his ilk, saying nasty things about the United States, along with Ursula von der Leyen, Mark Rutte, and the rest of them. Come on over to a racket that has kept the bankers on solid ground forever, and that is the reverse or the yen carry trade out of Japan, which has been the scam arbitrage forever, which is bankers roll in, they buy yen for free, they convert it to dollars, they loan that all out in these loans, they cover the spread, they take the spread, life is good, they've made their cash. Meanwhile, the Japanese people suffer, Japan suffers, but the banks are capitalized, and then that builds up a whole lot of cash, and those loans can be made in the form of private credit loans through the private equity firms into things like data centers, surveillance cameras, and all kinds of things, because that's where the financing comes from. If you want $1 trillion in construction funds to make data centers so that we can have these soul cages, you got to loan the money out. Well, because of banking regulations, if you have depositors, direct depositors, you can't loan that money out that way. How do they get around it? Well, they go get Fred's Bank in St. Barth, and Fred's Bank loans that money out. Here's the problem. Any of the AI companies make any money? Any profits? No, just running at a loss. Well, so how are they going to pay those loans back? They don't. What they do is they get real fancy real quick. They say, hey, Fred's Bank in St. Barth, we can't really pay you. And Fred's Bank is like, well, we can't report to the private equity company funding us that our collateral's not really worth anything anymore. Tell you what, why don't you give us a payment in kind, which means send us a paperclip or a dog named Rex or something, and we'll push the entire loan onto the back end of this term, and you'll pay us another time, and we're just going to report on our balance sheet that all this paper is 100% on the dollar and collateral's great, and we'll report that up the chain. Our balance sheet's all fine. Well, this is building now up into trillions of dollars. But I just explained to you that the liquidity faucet just got turned off because the money is getting clawed back via your collateral's not really worth anything, so you're going to have to pay these loans back, private equity banks that were living on the Japan carry trade. So now we call that the reverse carry trade. And the money's changing again. So that's why you saw the central banker at the Bank of Japan scream bloody murder. You can't do this. You're taking over Japan. You're destroying us. America's taken over the Japanese financial system. No, not really. We've just taken over all the corrupt elements of that. And Japan can have its monetary system back. So you're welcome. But if you look at this high stakes game in the trillions and trillions of dollars, who gets hurt here when you start talking about amassing these derivatives that aren't worth the paper they're printed on? All you have is paper. And then eventually all your paper gets called. You have to sell those assets for pennies on the dollar. So who gets to buy those assets if all the crooked bankers were the ones who have to sell them for nothing? So there is the concern of collateral damage in this war, because in between that is your insurance policies, your pension plans. They're all invested in this because they're forced to. You have no choice. I want to be with Billy's big private equity fund, and this is who manages my pension fund. Uh-oh. Billy was invested in a lot of these little shadow banks. Uh-oh. Billy bought a life insurance company and took the shadow bank paper and put it into the life insurance company. And now there's a ratings company that says this is all investment grade paper, but it's not, because the collateral's not worth anything. So it doesn't look good for the globalists and the banksters. They've got little macroeconomists all over the interwebs and YouTube and everything else saying, you might want to look at this. This is dangerous. And it's getting more and more visibility. Well, what happens when the herd gets spooked in a banking situation? They run. They want all their money back. And that's exactly what's happening. There are redemption requests of a lot of these banks, and the banks have said, we're not giving you back your money. We're illiquid. So what we'll do is we'll give you could take a 5% redemption, and that's where we're sitting. Brother, that is exactly what it smells like. And then to make matters worse, you have markets that are pumped that, the stock market's going up. It's fine. Sure it is. Okay. Until it's not. So this is, I took me a while to get you there, but what I'm describing to you is a battlefield, and it has real winners and losers, and it's going to have collateral damage associated with it. But what I would say to folks is, to the extent that you can educate yourself about this, to the extent that you can understand when this shoe drops, and I believe it will, in terms of, I don't know what it'll look like, a market crash or financial crisis, whatever. When it drops, don't run for the ledge and jump off. Don't do that. Wait. because what I believe, and this is my opinion only, but what I believe is on the other side of that thing is a brand new monetary system. That treasuries go to either gold-backed or partially gold-backed, that we start looking at a free version of stablecoin, a free version of digital currency, not CBDC, not digital ID, none of that crap, and disintermediating these massive bankers that have lived off their fees, could care less whether you make money or not. And then they get cut out, and they're the ones holding the paper, and we're moving on to something different that actually takes the handcuffs off of us. I think that's possible. And the reason I believe that is because President Trump didn't come this far to fight these guys, understanding that everybody on the other side of this thing's going to be financially ruined. But I taught the bankers a lesson. That's not that's not the legacy he's looking for. So I think if you listen very carefully to what Scott Bessent has talked about with stablecoin, with different types of platforms that could be used as a means of transaction, I think that's the types of plates that I see coming together. But since the day you and I first started talking about the ford off the coast of Venezuela, everything that I just mentioned has happened. And we talked about
Wow. Excuse me. Have you signed up for my free newsletter yet? Go to richdoespolitics.com. Wow. Okay. And then how is Europe caught up in all of this?
That's the hard part. So somebody's got to be the bag holder for all this. Now let's look at what Europe's done. Europe has doubled down on derivatives. And what I mean by derivatives is you're not trading physical gold. You're trading paper that says you're controlling some physical gold till you're not, and then your paper's worthless. You're not storing physical gold or silver. You have denied yourself access to your own natural resources. You blew up Nord Stream, for God's sake. And you've deindustrialized. I mean, look at Germany that has knocked down its own nuclear power plants. Is there any better visual of national suicide being committed? And now the calls in Europe are climate change is real. Just look at all these forest fires these people set.
And all the people coming over from Africa because of climate change.
Oh, yes, they're all running in because of climate change. Nobody ever incentivized them to do it otherwise. In other words, I do, I worry about this every day for you. I love Europe. I've lived 10 years of my life in Europe, and I don't wish these outcomes for my European friends, but let's face it, the majority of these bad guys, or the managerial class for the puppet masters, reside in Europe. They were all groomed to be these leaders at the World Economic Forum. They reside in Europe. They are not doing things in the European best interest. And they do control the media lines, as you and I have talked about many times. And so all they're trying to do is keep the herd from being spooked long enough, but they are stealing everything that's not nailed down in Europe right now.
Stealing it. One of the ways they're doing it is through taxation, because there's talk of a property tax in the UK, plus other forms of taxation that they want to bring in. I listened to a video, Green and Pleasant Land, really, really great coverage on what's happening in the UK. I do recommend that channel. But there's an amendment in a forthcoming bill that will allow 16-year-olds to vote. It will give them the vote. But also, if you don't vote, you pay a £10 fine. Because 16-year-olds given the vote, most of them aren't going to vote.
Fabulous.
But if they have to pay a £10 fine because they didn't vote, then they will vote. And what will they vote for? They'll vote for all the stuff that they got brainwashed in at school. Carbon dioxide is bad for you.
Of course. Or what they're paid to vote for. In the case of the migrants being shown, here's your 3 square meals. This is what this is. If you like to keep these benefits, this is exactly what you're going to do at that voter box. Sure, no problem. More of this? Okay. There's a book that I'm finishing up right now, and it's an old book. It's written in 1937, and I just hate that I did not come across this book earlier in my life, but it's so important. And it's written by an American, once communist, eventually becomes a conservative university professor. His name is James Burnham. And I've never heard of Comrade Burnham, but he was in the 1930s. He was a Trotskyite, New York University, living the liberal dream, writing letters back and forth with Trotsky. So firsthand sourcing. And then here comes World War II. And then he decides through that process that no, he's really a conservative. And he gets this Saul to Paul conversion, if you will. and he bets wrong on everything. His predictions of, the Germans are going to win the war, they'll never attack Russia, all this. But the supposition of his book, The Managerial Revolution, which is so important today, his book describes what the puppet masters create, your World Economic Forum marinated, coagulated monsters that go out there like the Ursulas of the world. And that this bureaucratic class, the managerial class, both on the corporate side and on the government side, they're faceless, they're nameless, they're never elected. They wield hundreds of thousands of pages of rules. They make up more rules, they make up more regulations, and there's nothing that you can do about it because we're all just following regulations. And that has had exponential growth and has actually taken over what we like to call democracy, but really it's supplanted individual freedoms for the managerial class. You want to go build a shed in your backyard? I'm imagining you've got to go someplace and go get a permit for that and ask somebody for permission to do it. So it's and it just goes on from there. Well, another guy, a Brit, George Orwell, he did not like James Burnham because he said this guy is wrong on about everything. But man, these ideas about the managerial revolution, these are big ideas. I'm going to write a fiction book about this. And that book becomes 1984. Okay, so Burnham goes on in his great new conservative life through the war. And this is so important. He, during the war, joins this outfit in his new conservative life, an outfit called the OSS. And later he becomes a CIA officer, still a New York University guy, educated now at Oxford and New York University as a full professor. And he in the OSS and CIA does propaganda. Well, imagine such a thing. So he becomes the original to Operation Mockingbird. And James Burnham goes on into practice what he preaches. So now let's go to another prominent conservative in American history, William F. Buckley Jr., who was the co-founder of the neoconservative periodical named the National Review, still with us today, still out there today. The other co-founder was James Burnham. So this tale, this story winds its way to today. And when we look at the face of these globalists and what they have built to deal with us, well, this is the managerial class. This is the managerial revolution. This is exactly what this is. And so that's why, whether you're in Brussels or in Washington, D.C., you've got 8, 9, 10, 12 ribbons of bureaucracy in front of you with their own overlords. And that's why they could care less what you think. They could care less if they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar or doing something with a child they shouldn't, or what the tabloids say about them, because they are so layered in and protected. And if we're going to be effective in this very, very fifth generation warfare battlefield, we better be reading guys like James Burnham and understanding who these people are much better than what we can.
Yep. Well, people should be subscribing to your new channel, Dangerous Intellectuals on YouTube. They should subscribe, comment, and like to this video and share ideas, join my community, and we can share ideas, share information, and consolidate, because we do need to come together at all sorts of levels. Now, you mentioned Burnham, that we should pay heed to what Burnham says, but I don't think you mean the esteemed new unelected Prime Minister of Britain. And
No, I don't. There's no relationship between the two, although those two men would understand each other quite well. You know, the old idiom, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That would be the story of this old bard professor. There's nothing noble about him. He steeps himself in academia. What are those? Those are the fertile fields to become one of these managerial class credentialed monsters. And you must go through exams, and then you go through university, and you must take your dissertation defense, and you must show that you bear these credentials well and that you're in the right circles. And once you're in the right circles, maybe you'll take a position of service in the government. And that's what they call it to get you. They call it serving. I'm a public servant. No, they're not. They're not serving anything. Serving themselves.
Yeah.
They're all part of a team. And this is how the racket is constructed. So it's great.
I wanted to actually, just on the racket, right? He didn't go into management of government, but Abdul Rahman El Sayed, Democratic senator senator candidate for Michigan.
Yeah. Right.
Studied at Oxford, got a Rhodes Scholarship set up by that arch-imperialist Cecil Rhodes.
Exactly.
To those that they can cultivate to put in positions of influence.
You're nailing it.
To further their globalist agenda.
You're nailing it. And what does he scream about? He screams about white privilege. He screams about the have-nots versus the haves. And yet this little ass clown has had millions of dollars in his back pocket and a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life.
Yeah,
he's the man of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little apparat. There's no difference between the apparatchiks of 1917 and the apparatchiks of today. None. Zero.
And people get fooled. They fall for the psyop like they did with this incredibly safe and effective medical concoction. Now, I want to go back to Andy Burnham, who was selected, not elected.
Yes.
Because I'd be interested in your take in where he is in all this and what you see is happening in the UK. But before I do that, I just want to let you know that there was a COBRA meeting this week gone, which is, for people who don't know, which is when the British government selected politicians and senior civil servants and the senior police and senior military and senior intelligence, because there's some serious emergency and crisis that they have to have this very important COBRA meeting. And they met because of the extreme weather.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's very dangerous.
And do you know what they came out with? Do you know what the recommendation was? They're going to ask the shops to stop selling disposable barbecues.
That'll fix it. I did hear this. That'll fix it. Yeah. You got to admit, it's outside the box thinking, and we're going to need a lot more of that in this, this environment.
God, please spare us.
I think this is my Yanks view of Andy Burnham. He is a Fabian's Fabian. If you were to go to the Fabian Society and look at its mighty emblem, the wolf wearing the sheep's clothing, I'm sure incredible volumes of all of the authors that the Fabian Society has put out. It's these masterful walnut bookcases, paneling, simply gorgeous. Maybe even a dram of whiskey while you're in their reading room. You should find Andy Burnham's picture, because I believe that of all of your leaders, with the exception of Tony Blair, and maybe time will bear this out, Andy Burnham is a Fabian's Fabian. He is absolutely wearing, to the best of his ability right now, sheep's clothing. He's trying to go to D.C. and kiss the ring of Trump, who's not buying it, for 5 seconds.
Really? I didn't know this. He wants an invite to, he wants to go and see Trump.
Too obvious. Oh, yeah, we'll kiss his ass. It's fine. We're Americans. We'll kiss anybody's ass and it won't mean anything to us. It's not a big deal. It just isn't. We're just not that way. It's just like that. Who's going to stand up first? I don't care. Whoever needs to stand up first can stand up.
Okay, but just on that, because we have spoken about how Starmer's regime ended.
Yes.
Premiership ended.
Yes.
That Trump had shown, speculation on your part, but it made sense. It fits, plausible, possible.
Yeah.
Trump had shown Starmer a dossier of material that they had on him. Might have involved some young Ukrainian models. I don't know.
Yep.
That's more speculation on my part.
Yeah.
And then on a Sunday following that, Trump posted Starmer's resigning tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine
and then he resigned.
Yeah.
But then we got Burnham, and that had him wondering that, given that Trump had a part to play in the ending of Starmer's premiership, then maybe Burnham is within the sovereigntist camp.
Nope, not at all. And I think in the British or in the UK power structure, you're not going to go find that guy until the Restore Party or even elements of the Reform Party get into a place where they can make a difference. And I think President Trump understands that you're just trading out one for another. But let's look at Starmer for a second. Talk about, if you want to slow down, at least blunt a little bit about the damage that's being caused to the UK right now, at least have a power upheaval and a power change out. Because now you've got back to a honeymoon phase for Andy Burnham. Whereas if Starmer was allowed to stay, he'd be in full stride right now doing God knows what. So I think it's one of those, to use a good metaphor right now, fire break situations where you start a fire as a backfire to stop a fire. But I think what's also interesting to me is that President Trump demonstrated that he has the ability to end a prime minister's career on the fly by just telling him, you're out of here, you're gone. And think about the reciprocity there. If you go back to the history of the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and they're marinating all of the American presidential candidates, picking the one that they like, and magically that's the one that gets to be president, except for, of course, Her Majesty Hillary. So it is fitting in a kind of poetic justice kind of way that President Trump would show up on a Sunday and tell him, you're out of here. You're out of here tomorrow. You're going to leave. You're going to make my social media post true. And so he may not have king picking ability. He may not have the ability to put, a reformer or the restore guy into power, but he certainly has demonstrated, I can take you out. I can certainly do that, because he's sitting on intelligence that those types of people wish he didn't have. And if they had similar on him, it would already be out in the ether.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It would be out in the open. Which are a little reference to the Epstein.
Fun to watch this. It is. I'm just very worried about the UK getting to the bad place before we get some of this tidied up. I'm very worried.
Well, Blaine, could you, because I know you have breakfast with Trump every morning.
Yes, I do.
Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, sure. And when we can't meet in person, we do it on Zoom, and I have my eggs here, and he's got, his locks.
And maybe patch me in the next time you do that, and we'll broadcast it live stream, right?
I've tried.
If you'd
I've
like,
tried.
Blaine,
And for some reason, Cash Patel's got a problem with that. I don't know why. That guy.
Okay. But couldn't he please just keep knocking them out? Burnham, you go. Next one, Shabana Mahmood, you go.
Yeah.
Next one, you go.
I hope so. That's a great plan.
There's nobody left. Just tell him, come on.
But it paralyzes them from doing stuff.
Yeah, it does indeed. It does indeed. Okay. Well, Blaine, always an absolute delight talking to you. Look forward to speaking to you again in about a week's time. Really, really appreciate it. Appreciate your insight, and I appreciate your stand. And actually, I'm going to say something probably shouldn't say to a army officer, right?
And I'm not, so we don't have to worry. I'm an Air Force officer.
And without wishing to sound gay, I appreciate your love for humanity.
Thank you.
Because that's where this comes from. So thank you very much. That was
taken as you meant it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Please like, comment, subscribe, join my community, support Blaine on his work, and see you again soon. This is Rich and Blaine signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.